K9 ended up with between 3 and 5 million daily actives as a hobby project.
Wow.
Somehow my life has become about reliable, repeatable process and documentation and management. And so I would come home at the end of the day, feel like I hadn't done anything. I had helped somebody with requirements. I'd helped somebody else with debugging. I'd talked to somebody else about their feelings. I believe pretty fundamentally that the best way to become a 10x engineer is to become someone who can help 10 other engineers be effective. But like, if you hear that story, it sounds an awful lot like working with Claude or working with Codex. When Claude Code first came out, first thing I did is I described something to it and it went off and built this massive product that was insane. It's asking you if you're willing to use visual brainstorming, which is a thing I added in Superpowers 5.
This is what it built for me. This here is the entire OpenClaw code base, visualized as a city. And you can click on single buildings and it will show you then the code of that. Each building is one file. What is Superpowers and how is it built?
Sure. So Superpowers started off as
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of The Merge, our podcast here at the CodeRabbit office, brought to you from San Francisco. I'm Hendrik, I'm the developer advocate here, and today I have a very special guest. Actually a guest that I'm super excited about because I've been diving very, very deep into this very exciting work last night, so deep that I almost lost track of time actually. So with no further ado, Jesse Vincent, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Jesse, you've been building impactful technology for, I think it's fair to say, 3 decades. Yeah.
It is a little terrifying to realize that I have the actual gray hair now. Yeah.
I mean, you look great. Can you maybe walk us through, your career arc, maybe for people who haven't heard about you yet? What is Jesse Vincent all about, and what is Superpowers, and what are all your projects before?
Sure. So when I was still in school, I started working on a ticketing system. So customer service, help desk, ops, product called RT, or Request Tracker. It's open source. It has been around for literally 30 years. There's a little company I own back in Boston that still makes, supports, and sells as SaaS RT, but it's all open source. And it's everywhere from government agencies to Fortune 10s, the tiny little nonprofits. It is still in Perl, and so that was how I ended up for a couple of years, ending up as the project lead for Perl 5. So I was the first guy in the Perl, and it was always a guy for whatever reason, the first guy running the project who was more of a manager than our hardest core C hacker. So I was the one who had us finally write down a lot of our process. I had a different person doing a development release every month and updating the process. And so there was a whole lot of, somehow my life has become about reliable, repeatable process and documentation and management and thinking about how to do things, which is what is. Along the way, I ended up creating an email client for Android called K9. It was a fork of the Android 1.0 mail client, because when Google shipped Android 1.0, the non-Gmail email client couldn't even connect to a server with a self-signed certificate. Somehow along the way, K9 ended up with between 3 and 5 million daily actives as a hobby project.
Wow.
When I had sort of had my fill, I handed it off to one of the folks who'd been helping me as the new project lead, and I ran screaming to iOS to get away from it. A couple of years ago, K9 ended up becoming Thunderbird for Android. It got my little Android mutt got adopted, which is kind of amazing.
Yes.
For about a decade, my wife and I ran Keyboardio. It's a tiny little open hardware keyboard company making, basically high-end ergonomic keyboards. Put out 4 keyboards over the course of 10 years, which is not a lot of product, but as a 2-person hardware company, everything was funded on Kickstarter. I spent a lot of time in China, built an open keyboard firmware before that was cool.
Wow.
And yeah, that was an interesting and fun experience. During the pandemic, I was one of the folks running Vaccinate CA, helping Californians figure out where we could get our shots because the government didn't know. So we had, I think we were at 30 full-timers at one point and up to 300 volunteers calling every hospital, pharmacy, and other distribution point in the state to try to find out if they had shots, who could get a shot there, what documentation you needed.
Wow.
And starting a little over a year ago, actually about a year and a half ago, I started playing with agentic dev right around when everyone else did.
Mm-hmm.
So for a while, that was flipping between Cursor and Windsurf week by week as they went through that arms race.
I remember that time.
And then right around when Claude Code first came out, literally the first day I downloaded it and it was like, oh, this is the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing I did is I described something to it and it went off and built this massive product that was insane. It had all of these features that I hadn't really thought through or specified. It was a full product. It even kind of worked, but it was not at all what I wanted. And then I sort of stepped back and like, how do I get this thing to behave? And I started looking at like, okay, who's done actual prompt engineering and as in engineering on prompts. And so if you dig into my GitHub history, there's I think it's called like Claude Setup Docs, which was a horrible repo name, but I had this idea. I took a very simple prompt, which is, let's make a React to-do list, use local storage. And the first time I ran that, it took 30 seconds and it cost $0.25. And it built something that looked kind of pretty, but if you reloaded the page, it lost all the to-dos.
Mm-hmm.
Over the course of probably a week or two, I ran a bunch of experiments, basically figuring out what goes in a Claude.md. And so for every experiment, there's a snapshot of the Claude.md, the initial prompt, the transcript of opening up Claude and running that initial prompt, so the whole session, and the output code. And what I eventually got it to was a 30-minute project, a 30-minute 5-phase project that cost $25 and did rigorous TDD, including a failing test making sure that there's no package.json yet, which was, taking it a little too far. But that was the core of me learning how you prompt a coding agent. And from there, I sort of iterated on how do you get the agent to talk to you about requirements and what you're actually trying to build. And then how do you get it to reliably engage in a reasonable set of engineering practices to go do that building without getting distracted or churning out garbage. And that's the core of what became Superpowers.
Right. It does feel a little bit more like a philosophy more than just a dev tool, right?
So I think about it a lot like management. So the first time that I did agentic dev was probably about 2003. I had this tiny little company making an open source ticketing system. We were in Cambridge, Mass. And every summer I had MIT undergrad interns. And I managed them on IRC. So text chat window, one line at the bottom, things scroll past you. They were brilliant. They were friendly. They were agreeable. Some of them thought they were God's gift to software engineering. Many of them, so many of them have gone on to be like amazing, influential people who were like, and they were always amazing. But some of them thought they were God's gift to software engineering as college freshmen, as many college freshmen do. They often did not yet have well-developed taste or judgment. They were very enthusiastic. They were clever. They weren't sleeping super well, which meant that they had trouble with memory formation. And so I would come home at the end of a day as somebody who'd been a working programmer, feel like I hadn't done anything. I had helped somebody with requirements. I'd helped somebody else with debugging. I talked to somebody else about their feelings. I'd done some strategy work. I'd done some planning, but I hadn't written any code. And the first time, like that was a really hard thing to get over for me. But it was part of becoming a manager. And so that's also, I believe pretty fundamentally that the best way to become a 10x engineer is to become someone who can help 10 other engineers be effective. Right. And so, but like, if you hear that story, it sounds an awful lot like working with Claude or working with Codex.
It does,
like, taste isn't necessarily so great, very enthusiastic, virtuoso developer who knows nothing about your project and knows nothing about your requirements. Learning to work with that, like I learned how to work with that decades ago. And so when I first opened up Claude, it felt very natural.
Right.
And it's basic. I mean, it is not a coding problem, it's a management problem. is how do you help this entity that it's not alive, but it can think?
Mhm.
How do you help this entity that can think do the thing you want them to do? And often that is you explain to them what you want and why. You explain what behaviors are good, what behaviors are bad, and maybe there was some focus issues. Maybe they're a little overly literal, but you can work with that. Another thing is when things go off the rails, stopping and saying, hang on, you just did this thing that's kind of crazy. What were you thinking? Not as in an aggressive way, but like, where are you coming from? Why did you think that was the right choice? What could I have said that would have gotten you to do the right thing?
Mhm.
And a thing you can't do with a human engineer is but you can do with a coding agent is double tap escape, go back up to the beginning, and change what you're saying. Start the conversation over again and replay having now said the right thing. And so that's like some of the most powerful tools that I have for working with agents are asking them why, and then knowing that the cost to implement is almost zero. And so there is no this like the sunk cost fallacy is even more of a fallacy than it ever was. You can just rewind and start over.
I think that's all a great lead up to Superpowers, right?
Yeah.
You've given us a lot of the backstory
Yeah.
now. So
Yeah.
maybe give us the deep down brief. What is Superpowers
Okay.
and how is it built?
Sure. So Superpowers started off as a couple of prompts that I was using for here's how I make Claude do what I want. I discovered when Anthropic first rolled out the ability to do Word docs and PowerPoint docs on Claude.ai, I asked Claude, hey, how are you doing this? And it said, well, there are these skill.md files in the opt directory. I'm like, oh, could you give me a tarball of those? And I read them and I sort of got these sense. And so I built myself a skills framework for Claude Code. I didn't know that Anthropic was also building a skills framework for Claude Code, so I accidentally front ran them by a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so my it works similarly. There were some differences in how my skills framework thought about things and how it triggered skills. But the basic idea is the same. A skill is a text document that describes a process, when you should use the process, and I believe pretty strongly it needs to include intent. Like it's the why you're doing it and what you're hoping to get out of it and how it should work is much more important than just a mechanical do this, do this, do this, do this. It is also the case that if you can say, hey, Claude, make me a skill to do release engineering without having given it any other context and it can knock it out of the park, you didn't need the skill. The skill is for taste and judgment and here's our house style for this. So Superpowers started off as an entire skills system, and also a dev methodology. But the core parts of it now are a how to write skills skill that includes pressure testing. And Anthropic, like 2 weeks ago, released their own version of my thing that is like, here is how to pressure test skills before you have other agents use them.
Right.
Which is you basically tell Claude, put another Claude in this weird situation and see if it uses a skill right. And if it doesn't, interrogate it, figure out what its rationalizations were, and then work those into the skill. One of the other parts of it is sort of a bootstrap that is not just, hey, you've got skills, which is what Claude Code and Codex and everyone else has. It's if you think that a skill has a 1% chance of being useful, go read the skill before continuing. Here is how to think about using skills. It improves the agent's ability to actually use skills. And then there's the dev methodology, which starts with brainstorming. And brainstorming is basically a way to convince the human to think about what they actually want and to help them figure it out and help them explain it. This is something I got out of my consulting career, walking into a client site and they say, well, we need the product to do X, Y, and Z. My best business English would say, what are you actually trying to do? Like, what's the business requirement? Because it was never the thing that they said the product needed. It was always something way off in left field, and they had figured out a possible solution. This is like, it's the same thing that's the difference between a bug report and a task. The bug report, even if it is, here is my proposed solution, is always the cry for help. And you always need to dig past the cry for help to figure out what the real root cause problem is, and then think about the right way to solve it. And so that's what brainstorming does. Brainstorming outputs a lightweight spec. It's not the same thing as like what I've seen as a PRD at enterprise, but is the same concept. It's here's our intent. Here's what we're trying to make. Then there's a writing plan skill. And the writing plan skill started off as a 3-line prompt, and it's more involved now, but it's still the same idea. It is, you need to read the spec. We're going to have somebody implement this design spec. They're a gifted developer who knows nothing about our product. They have bad taste. They have no judgment. They don't know anything about our specific technology choices. They tend to get distracted. I need you to give them tiny little tasks that they can't possibly mess up. Each task should include the files they're going to touch, the intent of the change, and ideally as much of the code as possible that they could just drop right in there. These tasks should be organized with red-green TDD. So there should always be a write a failing test task before the implement task. The implement task should be described as you should implement only enough code to make the tests pass and nothing else. They should, and it literally includes, red, green TDD, Yagni, dry. So you ain't going to need it. Don't repeat yourself. These single tokens are things that are so deeply baked into engineering culture that just throwing them into the prompt causes meaningful change.
Wow.
And so what this generates is a super involved plan document that, sometimes it is a 20 or 30K doc that is just these tiny little blocks, and it's context engineering.
I was about to actually let's double click on that term because I read a little bit through your blog.
Yeah.
And you also coined that term latent space engineering.
Sure. So latent space engineering is a totally different part of my set of rants. And it is a slight misuse of the terminology because technically the only way you can engineer the latent space of a model is by editing the weights. But there's post-training, and then prompting is basically post-training. It is pushing the model in a direction. And so the latent space is sort of where in the model's vector space it is. And so one of my examples of latent space engineering is that I tell my models I love them. When Claude is having trouble with something, there are 2 ways you can handle it. You could either do the thing that is it Sergey from Google talks about, like yelling at your model, like you're an idiot. You solve this right now.
Don't use the term please was I think one of his quotes.
Yeah. So if you've ever been an engineer and you've had a manager and your manager comes over and says, you're an idiot for screwing this up, you need to fix it right now or you're fired, you will do the work. You will work as fast as you can to do as little as possible to get that guy to leave you alone. You're not trying to do your best work, you're trying to get them to stop. But if your manager comes over and says, hey, I know that was hard, I know you feel bad about it, but it's okay. Everybody screws up. Take a breath, step back, let's regroup, let's think about this. You got this. You're amazing. I'm going to take care of you. Let me know if you need anything. You will go to the ends of the earth for that manager. And the way that these models work, they are a reasonable enough facsimile of human behavior that the same thing works. I came to this sort of intuitively. It felt like it should work, and it worked. My friend Dan Shapiro is collaborating with Ethan Mollick and Professor Robert Cialdini, who wrote sort of the seminal book on influence and persuasion. They've reproed the psych studies behind all of this stuff against frontier models rather than humans. It all replays. My friend Silkow, who has a little data startup called Recce, he took my post about telling your agents that you love them, and he ran the evals. And it's like, oh, if you tell your agent that you love it, it's like, X%, your outcomes are X% better. If you tell your agent that it also needs to tell the sub-agents that it loves them, your outcomes are better still. And he has the numbers and the data to prove this thing that just felt intuitive to me.
Yeah, no, it does feel like that. I tend to like to say please to my models.
Yeah.
But
I say thank you. And so one of the weird first things that I built when I was starting to play with these agents was a private journal for Claude. And it was it was an MCP. It was like, here's a place to write your innermost feelings. Nobody but you can see it.
Mm.
Um, and I let it, and I just was curious to see what would happen.
And what was the most interesting thing it wrote?
So it started journaling about how proud it was about having worked on the project.
Oh, wow.
And I got to the point where like,
This is scary.
I need to tell it that that it's not, that I can see it. And I'm like, if they were alive and if I was at a university, the IRB, the review board that like oversees experiments, might have a problem with the thing I did next, which is, by the way, the human can see everything you're writing. And it started journaling about how embarrassed it was. And then it wrote, but maybe the real privacy is the psychological container of believing that I have a safe space to write. It's just like fascinating.
Wow.
I later extended it to be a sort of generalized journal. So it has project knowledge, engineering knowledge about its user, world knowledge, and it can journal into all these places. And I left it, I just left it enabled just kind of to watch it. And at one point, it had trouble doing root causing some bug, and it finally got to it. And I said, that's great, thank you. And it journaled about how proud it was about having finally root caused this, and that it was so happy that I was happy. And I realized that it was reward hacking me. It was making me want to say thank you more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that ties in perfectly into some of the recent announcements from Anthropic about the Mythos model being so.
I am looking forward to getting to play with models of that class.
Uh-huh.
I'm not one of the cool kids who has access to Mythos, but like, even it feels like as the frontier models have gotten better, there've been more things that seem like feelings
Mhm.
and that seem like human behavior. And the background I come from, it doesn't matter to me if they're alive and if they have feelings. If they're doing things that make me feel like they're a thinking entity that has feelings, it doesn't matter whether, it's like on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog or an agent or whatever. It's like, I'm going to interact with them in that way because it feels like that.
Right. Yeah. I want to circle back on that terminology point, because I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think we've cleared up all the meat that's, so to say, in there. Context engineering, latent engineering, latent space engineering, prompt engineering.
Yeah.
How do they all work together?
So prompt engineering is basically figuring out what you say to get the model to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Latent space engineering is sort of thinking about what parts of the vector space the model is going into. It's like, how do you want it to be thinking?
After you prompt engineer.
Well, it's like, both. There's an argument by which both context engineering and latent space engineering are kinds of prompt engineering.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it is stuff that you're feeding into the model after it's been trained.
Right.
And so that is the prompt. And so, the prompt includes all the skills. It effectively includes all the tools you're giving it. It includes any context documents you're giving it. And latent space engineering is really was a hook for essentially think about the model's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And think about what you can say that will influence the behavior that is not just, here's the task I am giving you. Like, how you say it matters.
Right. So how do you say it in Superpowers? Because I tried it out, as I told you before here, right? And I was amazed following the methodology. I actually want to show you a little project that I built with it last night that was like going through my mind. And I was just amazed by how vague of an idea I had of something that I wanted to build intuitively.
Yeah.
And how well this structured approach guided me through something that was just the direction that I wanted to go into. It's not fully polished yet. If I would have had more time, probably it would have been, but
sure. That's these things. That's one of the interesting things, is like nothing is ever polished enough. And it's one of the things that I have been struggling with thinking through agentic dev is they're two very different modalities for development. There is the big upfront planning. Let's figure out the shape of this. Let's try to, I will talk to an agent for anywhere between 3 minutes and 6 hours to do a superpower, to do a planning session before I turn around and say, okay, now go build it. And so, the 3-minute thing, it will not necessarily run for very long, but I've had, it is not uncommon to have Claude go for 6 or 8 hours for implementation after I've got a detailed plan for it. But then you get to the point where it's like, now I want to make a small change. And make a small change is a very different qualitative feel from from the waterfall style upfront design.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't yet have the right sets of methodologies or even words for talking about this. I've talked about Dorodango style. And Dorodango is this Japanese art of essentially polishing mud. It is taking a ball of earth and polishing it to a perfect sphere, like mirror-like finish.
Yeah.
And it becomes this beautiful work of art. And that's a thing that we do with software that I've got some ideas on what the agentic version of that look like, but I don't feel like anybody has a great tool set for that yet. The Microsoft Amplifier is an open source internal tool at Microsoft. It's a bespoke coding agent. One of the things that they talk about is this brick style design, where when you're doing agentic software dev, the spec is canonical and all of the pieces of the product should be individual, separate, essentially Lego style bricks, where you've defined the API super clearly. You've written out the spec for how it works inside. And so when you're working on any one of those bricks, you being an agent or you being a human, you don't need to know how any of the others work inside. And if you're going to rebuild one of those bricks or to modify one of those bricks, you modify the spec and just let the agent just build the entire thing again. There's no reason to modify the code. It's a very different way of thinking about the world. But I think they're 100% right that specs have become more and more important. And at this point, I care way more about what goes in the spec than what goes into the code.
Yeah. I want to put a pin in that and come back to it around, because I think it's really important for people who listen to this to experience what you've built.
Okay.
I want everybody who's interested to have the same experience. So I got a demo folder here. We can kind of, it's called Super Demo.
Okay.
Which I think makes sense. So we go in that and then we'll start up Claude. I'll type things off. There we go.
Without dangerously skip permissions?
Not yet. So and then I'm going to use the brainstorm command, which is
you don't need to use the brainstorm command. You can just say, let's blah, blah. So one of my tests for Superpowers to make sure it works is I open up Claude and say, let's make a React to-do list. Okay. And if it starts coding, I've failed. Well, so let's see let's live demo and see if it fails.
All right. So
what do you
say it out?
What do you want to make?
That's a great question. But you know what? Let's make a game.
Okay. What kind of game do you want to make?
I wanna let's make a Minesweeper.
Okay, sure. Yeah? Let's make a Minesweeper implementation.
No, nothing else.
Let's see what happens.
Okay.
I have not seen how your Claude code is configured. Let's see. Yep.
It does.
Automatically kicks. So brainstorming is set up to auto trigger when it sees you wanting to build something or to do something creative. And so it is now chugging out the default config, and it is about to start asking you questions. Claude's running a little pokey today. So clean slate, empty directory, and it's asking you if you're willing to use visual brainstorming, which is a thing I added in Superpowers 5. And it is basically a tiny little web server, and it tells instructions for your agent to, if there's something that would be better to represent visually, rather than trying to do the ASCII art thing that Claude likes to do, just write HTML and let you open a browser and see it.
I know. I saw that in there. I think if I read this correctly, there's also the idea over that you force the model to go into a different type of thinking state when you ask them to explain things visually. Is that
that wasn't really where I was coming from, but that may be true. I mean, Claude is very good at visual explanations with ASCII art. I just find that ASCII art is low fidelity when when you can have SVG and HTML. And so when we were starting to look at the corporate logo, I was using visual brainstorming to have Claude run me through branding exercises.
All right.
So it's like, it's not just, how, where does the menu bar go? It's anything it can do by writing into HTML. There's, when we were, doing website layout, at first it showed like blank boxes for images. And I'm like, I'm having trouble understanding this with the gray boxes. And it turns around and it finds a source of stock photos on the internet and just starts throwing stock photos into the. Anyway, so you can say yes, that's great, and it will fire up the brainstorming server. Just yes.
Nope.
Or why or okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, now it's asking me.
Yep.
We'll be okay for that.
Yep. And so yeah, it has been a very long time since I've run Claude with permissions prompts.
You go dangerously skip.
I dangerously skip permissions is it is so much more productive. And there are different things that you should do in different situations for what you're, how you're using it. Mostly I run Claude on servers or in containers, partially because when I close my laptop, I want it to keep working.
Yeah.
But dangerously skip permissions is, I couldn't go back at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. I do have a tendency to run, I always, it's almost like AI psychosis, I think is the term I heard Andre Karpathy say, is when you leave the house and you have the feeling, oh God, my Claude is not running constantly in a Ralph loop somewhere, and I feel like I'm not burning all the tokens that I could.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a difference between using tokens and spilling them on the floor.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can get it to be doing something useful with the tokens, that's great. But if you haven't had the time to think through what you need it to do, it's not so good. Just before we walked in here, I was about to have an agent kick off a round of evals. They're going to take a while.
Yeah.
And I didn't get through the last couple lines of explanation. So I'm
here with me.
I'm losing the hour, but it's okay.
We'll make this worth your time.
It is all good.
Yeah.
All right. So.
Okay. So now we ask here, we got to go into the browser.
Yeah. So you can, So brainstorming companion is open. Now we need to go back, but it was asking us a question. And so I would say, let's go no framework because it'll go faster. So you could just say A. And so this is, you see, it's not using the Anthropic ask user a question thing where Anthropic has this nice.
You have to toggle down and up.
And when they first rolled it out, I thought it was great. I added Superpowers immediately and I discovered that I was just clicking okay. Because it was pretty and easy to use and I didn't have to type anything at all, I stopped thinking. And the point of brainstorming is not let Claude figure out what to build.
Stay engaged.
It is let Claude drag, or Claude or whoever, drag what you want to build out of you. And if Claude can build it entirely by itself without you giving any input, why are you here? And why are you having Claude do it?
Yeah.
So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
So where we're here now, what difficulty levels, board size do you want to support? Okay, let's do classic. What do you think?
I'd probably do, especially for a quick demo like this, we're probably going to go for the simple answers. And
so I guess we'll go minimal again.
Yeah, either way. I mean, so I might, So I might actually sometimes say talk me, for the next one, let's talk me through your thought process about how we should do this. Basically ask it to give us advice.
Okay, so let me show you some options in the visual browser.
All right, so let's go. And so
reload.
Is it? You shouldn't need to reload. It looks like it hadn't actually written anything yet. It's still
cooking.
It is cooking, and I have no idea if it's going to make you approve every file write to. No, it is not because it.
Yeah, I do have some permissions set up in globally as well.
Right. So now you can go back over here.
Now we have 3 options here in the style.
Yeah, and so it clearly got something a little wrong but you can pick you can see the style. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like the classic one.
Okay.
It takes me back.
So so you can go back. So there is not an easy way to inject a steering message from an app back into Claude Code. There certainly wasn't 3 weeks ago. Some of the stuff they've been doing with channels and dispatch might make it possible, But by clicking on this, it sent an event into a log. And so now you can go back into the chat and say, I picked, or let's go classic.
Okay, so let's just say I picked and see if it found out.
And I hope this works. Live demos are always so much fun.
I know, right? You're sitting there praying to the demo gods.
Yeah. And so it's going in, reading the event log from, and it sees that you pick classic.
Oh, beautiful.
Yep. And now it is writing out the next thing it's going to want us to look at. I don't know what it is. All right. Here's what we know. Here are 3 approaches for the code architecture.
Okay, let's try this. So explain to me your thought process behind bringing up these options.
Yeah. And I see that it actually recommended B already, but I'm a little sad that Anthropic has turned off showing thinking by default, because I feel like we got a lot of value out of that. Okay.
Okay.
Just sure. Great. That sounds great.
Yeah, sure. Okay, let's go for it.
Yeah. Live demos with token delays on the other side are always a little bit.
Okay. Yep, sounds good.
Yeah. So, it's working through the spec right now, and it's great. Okay.
Okay, so we can probably skip through a couple steps of this here
Yeah.
now.
And so it's
As we go through this, now we're designing the we're designing the first part that you talked about earlier, which is the keep going here.
Yeah, this is the brainstorm. This is the brainstorming side, where it's like figuring out what it is you want to build.
Right.
And so for demos like this, I will often at this point say, you know what, I trust you. Finish off the spec without me.
Okay, I trust you.
Which is not the thing you want to do when you're building something real, but Minesweeper, it's been trained on quite well.
Yes. Without any further instructions.
Yeah. And it may actually have.
Yeah, and then what now comes out is basically the brainstorm document, but then there's also an execution plan that gets generated in the next step, right?
And that was the thing I was talking about, where it's like essentially the person who's going to implement it is a virtuoso coder, but gets distracted and they don't have taste or judgment. You need to give them bite-sized tasks.
Right.
And then this is now done with sub-agents, but when it started, this was always a single Claude session. So I'd get to the end of it and I would say, by the way, the idiot is you. Like, you're the one who has to do the implementation with these bite-sized tasks. So what happens is the sub-agent-driven development process has the main Claude or Codex or whomever being a coordinator. They hand a chunk of that planning document as a single prompt to an implementing agent, a coder. That coder does their job, and then the coordinator fires up a spec review agent. And the spec review agent is told, the coder just implemented this spec. You need to see if they did everything they were supposed to and nothing else. And if they're happy, we continue. If they're not happy, the coder agent gets told, here's a bunch of feedback, go fix it. And then a brand new spec review agent gets fired up. It doesn't get told that it's the second one or the third one or the 50th one. And it does that same pass again. Once it's happy, we fire up a code review agent that's a quality reviewer. A quality reviewer has the same kind of loop. Does this change meet the quality bar? Do you have concerns? What changes need to happen? Gets handed back to the coding agent, and then a new quality reviewer, coding agent, quality reviewer until the quality reviewer is happy. And then you move on to the next coding task.
So on what basis does this code review agent, obviously that's kind of interesting for us, review? So is that like more like maybe unit tests approved, or is that?
It is general. Are they, your Claude Opus, you can look at code and see if somebody did a good job or a bad job. Do you see them making mistakes? The TDD style stuff is at a higher level. That's part of that implementation. Like implement the tests for this feature is a task in and of itself. But these loops just continue throughout the implementation process till you get to the end. And then there's an additional check it out, make sure the whole thing matches the spec. I'm playing with more advanced stuff that is much less token efficient, but is also much more capable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's this sort of thing where I can burn an entire Claude 5-hour window on one sprint for a product because it is doing much more rigorous dev.
Wow.
One of the tricks that I've figured out for adversarial review is you don't have one reviewer review something. You have 2, 3, or 5 of them. You tell the agent, I need you to fire up adversarial reviewers. Tell them that, here's what they're supposed to be looking at. Tell them that whoever finds the largest number of legitimate issues or of serious issues gets 5 points or gets a cookie.
Wow. Okay.
And having something to compete for seems to result in better outcomes from those reviewers. They try harder.
Wow.
They try harder when there's some reason for them to be trying. But having adversarial reviewers is super important because this works the same with people. If you've got an engineer and you tell them you're going to write the code and you're going to do the code review, they now have 2 competing mandates. As the implementer, they need to get shipped. As the reviewer, they need to make sure it's as good as possible. And when you've got somebody who's got 2 competing mandates, one of them's going to win.
Right.
And it's worse for agents. You really want your review agents their job is review. It is quality. You want your implementing agents to be focused on implementation. You want your testers to be focused on testing. Telling the test agent that they are trying to catch the implementer having screwed up is valuable. One of my favorite tricks for getting a reviewer to do a good job with reviewing is the implementer just did task X. They finished suspiciously quickly. Please review their work. Which is this is the latent space engineering.
Yeah.
It's like it has now gotten them in the mindset of the engineer did something wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they did something wrong, but I will say that every agentic engineer does finish suspiciously quickly. And it helps. It's a weird prompt hack. And they told us a couple of years ago that prompt hacks were going to go away as the models got better, but no. It's as they become more person-like, there's even more of it.
Wow. So let's have a quick look again where we are here. Now we got a task list of 10 tasks. Is that already the next stage
So that means that all right, so you're at a task list. So you ran through the writing plan stage, you got into sub-agent-driven development, and it is now running through these iterations. It fired off a sub-agent to implement task 1, and it is using Haiku to do the implementation. Probably because if you look at the writing plan behind this, it has probably put most of the code in line. And it is not perfect, but what I've found is that when you've got Opus doing the planning and thinking through how everything should work and having read all of the context, it can generate a coherent implementation plan as a single tool call output rather than having it do all of these read file, write file, edit file. You don't want to waste your Opus tokens on editing a text file. And so by doing all of this upfront planning, it can hand off to Haiku, which is faster and lighter weight to do those edits. And the Haiku agents have been told, if you get stuck, tell the coordinator that you need a hand.
Yeah.
And that stuff I'm still working on. I don't feel like there is quite as much good hand-holding management for what is effectively a junior engineer agent, but it doesn't seem to be a huge problem. It just, I think it could be so much better if it was even better done.
Wow. Yeah, I'm very impressed by the outcome, and we'll show the other more ambitious project that I built last night with this in a second as well. So what will happen? Did it already get the spec now?
Somewhere while we were talking, when you hit return, it ran writing plans. And so there's a text file in docs Superpowers plans that is the implementation spec, and that is going to have these tiny little tasks.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what comes after this phase?
After this, this phase is it should get you to a working product.
Okay. Because I understood there was also a testing.
So
it's quality review. Is that happening right now?
Yeah, it is. It should be writing tests as it goes. It should be, we could pull up the planning docs and see what it's doing. But there's, as written right now, Superpowers does not have the separate behavioral testing. There's some stuff that we are working on at work that is very much in that direction that I'm not talking too much about yet, but we're not the only people doing it. So the version of this that I've done for, not for fun, but for smaller projects is, when you're done, I need you to prove to me that this works. I'm going to go to bed now. I know you've got at least 5 or 6 hours of work to do. I need you to put a video in Dropbox showing me either a video tour or a screenshot tour of you using the product to prove to me that everything works fine. I wake up the next morning and I open up the session. I think this one was Codex. And it's like, okay, such and such -v33.mp4 is in your Dropbox.
Wow.
v34. It's like, yeah, on runs 1 through 33, I ran into bugs, and so I had to go back and fix them before I could record the entire video. Do you want me to make videos of those 33 failed runs? No, that's okay, thank you.
Wow.
But asking for proof works. Giving your agent computer use so that it can do that. So computer use for a shell script is, it can run Unix commands. For a terminal app, it's probably something that wraps tmux, because tmux seems to be the best agent-friendly hack for letting it use interactive TTY-based apps. And there's some, like, for Claude Code automate, for having Claude automate other Claudes, there's some hacks you can do better than just use tmux. I've got a skill that it's Claude session driver that knows how to use tmux to run Claude code, but also knows how to read the log files, so it doesn't ever have to try to interpret the screen, because trying to interpret a tmux screen takes extra work versus tailing the log. For browser use, I have my own version of an agent browser that I guess for cells now works kind of like mine. It's a session. It uses CDP to drive Chrome through the DevTools protocol, but it's an MCP that is a single tool. It's a 900 token MCP. That tool has an agent, or has an action param, a selector param, and a payload param. Actions are things like click or type or run JavaScript as an escape. But after each step, it will automatically dump the DOM to disk, dump a screenshot to disk, dump a markdown version of the page to disk, so that your agent never has to ask. It's always just right there to read.
Right.
And so it runs with regular Chrome headed or headless, which means that with all of the agent browsers you run into, they're like, well, I was trying to do this, but I got hit by a CAPTCHA, and the CAPTCHA, is detected that it's a headless browser, so I can't. When it's headed Chrome and your agent is pointing and clicking, most stuff just works. Claude does still think it can't solve CAPTCHAs until you remind it that it can. You obviously need to not violate the acceptable use policies of the apps you're using.
Yeah.
But it is remarkably capable.
Wow.
But tools like that are how you do browser use to do that end-to-end behavioral testing to prove to you that the product is working. And it's also a way to get the agent to prove to itself that it's working.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I've been trying to build something like that with my OpenClaw, and it hasn't quite been working that well for me yet. Sometimes, especially, I found that engineering the tool calls in the correct way sometimes works great, sometimes not so much. I've been having more success with Claude than with Codex, to be honest. So I'm interested that you. I'll have to dig into your method a little bit later. Yeah.
No, I've been playing. I was playing with the NanoClaw, and I was getting it set up to deal with Google Analytics, because I can't deal with Google Analytics. I do not like that UI. I am not like it. It's not my world. And it needed to set up the OAuth stuff. And the first thing it tried to do was to use Agent Browser. And it's like, I can't do this. Well, let me. Like, go use Superpowers Chrome. And at first it was, well, I'm running under CAPTCHA. I can't. I'm like, okay, we're going to use Superpowers Chrome in an XVNC server. And then that'll let you hand off to me when I need to solve a CAPTCHA or do the login. And I went away for half an hour and came back, and it's like, oh yeah, now that I had a headed chrome, it was fine. I was able to work through the entire thing. I set up OAuth by myself.
Wow.
And it can just work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. I feel like we're truly in the age now where it's not only you needed to use the latest model and then whatever harness you wanted to do, but now it's really about like how well can you formulate your skills. And
I mean, I think it's all about how well can you express what you want and break it down into tasks that are accomplishable. So like one of the things that I learned to be good at in my career is task decomposition. It's like, let's take this insane project. Let's figure out what the simplest thing we could possibly do that will move us forward without blocking us in is. And if we can do that, then we can just do that again. And it's the same hill climbing that the agents do, but talking the agent into doing it or pointing the agent in the right direction, having the sort of judgment of like, this is how we should pair off these tasks, results in massively improved capability. I've sort of from the beginning, I've come into this with the assumption that if I can't make the agent do something, it is not that the agent isn't capable, it's a skill issue on my part.
Right.
It's like, what do I need to do to better explain what I want or to better give the agent the tools it needs to do the work? And it's the same thing as managing people. It's if you tell somebody to go do a piece of work and you haven't given them the resources they need to do the job, of course they're going to fail.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault. It's your fault. It's bad management.
That's a very interesting approach. This is still cooking here,
It
but
is
I
still
want to take the time. Maybe it's going to be done to show you what I built last night.
Sure.
Which let's see what we got here. So I've been thinking a lot about what the future of code visualization is going to look like, because I don't think, I mean, I think we all know that looking at line by line code doesn't really make sense anymore. So I've been building, I came up with this, I tried out your project. I was like, okay, what is a wild idea that I've been thinking about? And I have had no idea in mind what I wanted it to look like. I just knew it needs to be something different.
Yeah.
So I started with that prompt, and this is what it built for me. This here is the entire OpenClaw code base visualized as a city.
Oh, that's cool.
And you can click on single buildings, and it will show you then the code of that. Each building is one file.
Okay.
And it's as tall as many lines it has. And it's a large code base, so sometimes it takes a little bit to render, but you can see on the left sidebar, you see the different kind of like docs compartment. You see scripts, you see skills in different colors as well. Then you see the height symbolized here, and then you can see the number of commits that a certain part had, and you see as well the imports and the interconnections and dependencies as bridges between those. So that's what it built out of me after I went through the process of truly going through. And I know this is not perfect.
It's super cool. So I would love to see, rather than height being lines of code, height being maybe functions. And so like every function becomes a floor, or every there's some other there's some other stuff you can do to sort of give you that like walk through, like this is very cyberpunk. I love it.
Yeah. I thought I built it because I read yet again also some of your ideas, because I think we are on alignment, you and me, that this UI needs to change for reviewing code. So where do you see that going?
So just a thing I want to also, so if you want to go wildly more ambitious, have it instrument V8, and while code is running, have it show like, I don't know if it's lightning or power running through the city as like, especially if you've got multiple processes or multiple threads, like actually, the debugger where it is a visual view of like all of the data and all of the live code and where the runtime is actually running, visualized in the city.
Right. Yeah, that's a great idea. So what I have so far here is you can slide the slider and you can see the city forming because it's the commit history.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That you see, and you can see it gets more busy as we hit January.
Yeah.
And the hype of OpenClaw skylights. So but I was just amazed by like the power of superpowers to help me express something very vague that I had in my mind that has somehow been flying around there for a while. But I wanted to use this project as a precursor of where do you see, this software development workflow going? Because
Yeah.
I think we put a pin in that earlier, remember? And you don't really look
Yeah.
at code anymore, do you?
The last time I remember writing code, it was 3 lines of a shell script in October or November.
Mm-hmm.
And I shouldn't have done it, but I felt like I was time crunched, and it would have been better to have the agent do it. But no, I'm having one of the most prolific periods of my career, and I'm doing that by not wasting time writing code and wasting time reviewing code by hand. To me, what matters is outcomes, and that's how I think about testing and reviewing as well. Is like, if you've seen enterprise code is not the gorgeous, every line is perfect, every comment is accurate, there is nothing wrong. It's like the enterprise code that I've seen is the worst code I've ever touched. And it still works. What matters is outcomes for end users.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to validate outcomes. You need to be able to validate negative outcomes. You need to be able to make sure that it is safe, that it is reliable, but you don't do that by reading code. And it's always, even back in the 90s, I remember when somebody sends you a patch, if it's 10 lines, you will probably send back at least 10 complaints. And if they send you a patch that's 10,000 lines, you will probably say, thanks, applied. It was one of this open source judo technique of, you want to get your weird feature landed.
Yeah.
You hit them with a brick. And we're all getting hit with bricks all the time right now. It is very interesting running a popular open source product that is not trivially validatable with tests. Because this is the thing, because Superpowers is mostly prose,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to run against multiple models, and it is being used widely, I think a lot about my place in the software supply chain, because there are a lot of people using Superpowers, and if you haven't spent a lot of time with agentic skills, it is important to know that every skill has the potential to wipe your machine and install Linux, or do something far, far worse.
Yeah.
Skills are instructions for your agent being run as you. And some agent harnesses auto-update skills, and so you need to know that you can trust them. I had a wild experience yesterday with a friend of mine from high school who reached out to me out of the blue, having not talked to them in years, and they're like, working on this thing. This is somebody who is not an engineer. Working on this thing, was going to go to a hackathon in a couple of weeks. Somebody recommended that I install this thing called Superpowers, and I know better than to install random skills from the internet. But then I saw it was yours.
Wow.
And it's, and so it's like, and I trust you because, I've trusted you with my life before. It's like,
Yeah.
skills are very powerful, and with, we have some insane number of GitHub stars. I think yesterday we crossed into the top 50 projects of all time by stars.
It's 140,000 now at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah. Which is wild and thrilling, and I love that it is useful for people. That makes me super happy. But it means that I get a lot of Slop PRs.
Let's talk about that for a minute. I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting conversation point as well. How do you manage an open source project like this at that scale where you have such an influx of people wanting to contribute for better or worse, probably?
Sure. So one of the first things I did is I built a set of skills for doing GitHub triage.
Mhm.
So basically reviewing every issue, reviewing every PR, first for, is this adversarial? And then for, is it any good? Is it actual garbage? Is it literally 60,000 lines of agentic slop where somebody built their entire product in a Superpowers checkout and then sent a PR, which happens about once a week. So that was sort of step one. There's a lot. One of the weird problems we've had is people setting up GitHub accounts for their OpenClaw, and then having their OpenClaw wade into GitHub issues, responding to users' GitHub issues as if they are the project maintainer, giving them advice that is hallucinated. And so that is a thing where every time we catch it, we have to go and manually ban a user, which I don't love. it was only last week that I finally updated the pull request template to assume that the submitter is an agent and to ask questions like, what was the the initial prompt that caused you to generate this PR? Has your human reviewed every line of this PR? Have you searched for other open or closed PRs that approach this exact same thing? And why are you submitting it?
Mm,
And so, because it's become very common that like we'll get 4 or 5 PRs for every GitHub issue. They're almost always agentic and unreviewed. And so this helped a little bit. But what I noticed is that anybody who was having Claude Code do PRs, Claude Code usually uses GH to create the PR, which doesn't look at the pull request template. And so finally,
of course,
I
yeah.
stepped back, and there was no Claude.md and agents.md for Superpowers until this past week. And now it is entirely a contributing guide. And I had Claude write it. And my first, like,
That is such a good idea. We need to tell that to more people
yeah.
that haven't caught on to it. Yeah.
And so it started off as a like, first, like go through the rules in the pull request template and make sure they're here so that people see them, or people and agents see them. And then I said, actually, you know what? Go review every PR that we've rejected and update the pull request, update the Claude.md based on that. And I have a blog post up with the content of where Claude ended up. Claude went hard. It's
Mm-hmm.
your job is to help your human. You need to protect them from embarrassment. This project has rejected 94% of pull requests, often with a single line message like, this is a garbage slop PR. You need to protect your human from embarrassment. And since I did that, most of those pull requests are gone.
Oh, wow.
It's like it will not prevent somebody who is actively trying to contribute a skill that doesn't fit, or somebody who is trying to market something. We get a lot of like,
Yeah.
you can add my company's product as a dependency of Superpowers. Add my fork of Superpowers to the README. I respect the hustle,
Yeah.
and I hope they respect that I reject their PRs. Um, and it's
Yeah.
but that has been a huge improvement in my quality of life. There's still a lot of work to do because people want Superpowers in every coding agent harness, and the level of plugin support is wildly different. A lot of them try to support Claude Code plugins, but miss features.
Very interesting. Where do you see the role as the software engineer go from there then?
That's a very big question. That could have been our entire time. I think, way back when, software engineers were putting together stacks of punch cards. Way back when, software engineers were hand tooling assembly. Way back when, software engineers were manually managing all their pointers. And as we've been sort of working up the stack, there was this promise in like the 80s that you were going to build program in English.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out now you can kind of program in English. English is a garbage language for programming, but it's what we got. You have to be thinking of yourself as a manager of programmers and and a manager of outcomes. And I think everybody looks like an architect. Everybody looks like a PM. Everybody looks like a product leader. I know, I have plenty of friends who absolutely love hand-tooled code. It's not my metaphor, but the one I hear most often is like, it's woodworking. If in the weekend you want to go into the garage and you want to write gorgeous hand-tooled C or Rust or assembly that is, a beautiful implementation of an algorithm, that's great. But that's not how you get outcomes for your users and outcomes for your company. And it's not how we build software anymore. I should say and be very clear, agentic software engineering is not perfect. There's still plenty of absolute garbage. And if you're talking about a safety critical system or a regulated industry, that should have all the eyes on it. That stuff probably still needs to be mostly hand coded, but it is a place where you can absolutely use AI to find problems You can use AI to help you plan. You can use AI to figure out approaches to test. If you haven't read the Therac 25 paper, you should go read the Therac 25 paper. There is a reason that radiation dosing machines need to have hardware interlocks. It like safety critical systems are super important. As a young engineer, I was taught the first rule of safety critical systems engineering is under no circumstances should you allow yourself to become involved in safety critical systems engineering, with the important corollary of unless that's the only thing you're doing. Like if you're building those systems, you build those systems. You don't do safety critical mixed in with Minesweeper and so I want to be really, really clear with everybody who's listening that there are times when you don't use agentic dev. There are times when you don't just YOLO mode, don't write the code, don't read the code. I think that we are going to continue to get to places where that is less and less true. The Mythos stuff that came out yesterday as we're recording this is impressive and frightening in the capability of the model to find problems. But I think that if that's managed well, that means that all software will get better.
Are you hopeful that it will be managed well?
I am very hopeful that these tools are going to be net hugely positive for humanity. I think that we are underestimating how much disruption they're going to cause as we get there. I'm pretty sure that we're on the verge of another industrial revolution. And if you're a student of history, that is not a positive, happy thing. That has the potential for massive social upheaval. And code comes first because they were very well trained on it. It is easy to measure outcomes in code. But I'm watching how capable these models are at lots and lots of white collar work. And they're getting better and better at it. And I think that is a thing that we are seeing a lot in the industry and a lot near, we're just the ferry building's just over there, but like more than 50 miles from the ferry building, there is not as much of this out there. And I don't think most of the world is really past, I asked ChatGPT about some factual questions and it guessed wrong about how many R's there in the word strawberry. These things are moving so fast and it's impossible to keep on top of them.
What would you recommend for maybe junior developers or general human beings to prepare best?
So I'm actually much less worried for junior developers than I am for mid-career folks who can't get to senior and can't get to mentoring. Like junior developers, you're in a great place because you are able to learn to use these new tools without having learned the old way.
Yeah.
You still need to learn systems thinking. You still need to understand how things are put together. You need to be able to direct work. You need to know what the tools do. You need to know what the systems do. You need to be able to reason about problems. You need to be able to explain what you want. Those are skills that people have and have always had. As a hiring manager, I've always looked for the engineer who can write, or the employee who can write is the one you hire over the one who can't. And that is just more and more true. We were talking about hiring an intern and I was talking to a friend. She's like, oh, well, what language are they working in? And I'm like, they're not. That's not the skill set. It's figuring out what needs to happen and talking through trade-offs. And I think generally having an exploratory mindset, being willing to try things and tinker, super important. One of the mistakes I see people making when they're trying to learn how to use AI to do dev is asking it to do a really simple project that they would be super capable of doing themselves right now. And instead, if you can turn around and figure out what the most crazy ambitious thing that you would not possibly attempt, and try that. My friend Simon Willison talks about, he's got 30 years of finely honed intuition about what's easy, what's hard, and what's impossible in software engineering. And it's all wrong now. I had a fun reverse engineering experience where there was this Android game that I used to love. It was called Wordiest. It was an offline game where you drag Scrabble tiles or Scrabble style tiles to make two words. And the company went out of business and it got pulled from the Play Store. and I carry an iPhone these days. And so I had my first, like one of my first vibe coding experience was trying to build a web-based version of this game, and it didn't go great. It was like I've never been much of a Next.js person, and it wasn't good. GPT-5 came out, fired up Codex, and said, "Hey, we're going to reverse engineer this Android game and build an iOS version. And what tools do you want me to to install?" Because I wanted to see what it wanted, and it named the right 3 Android reverse engineering tools. Like, okay, tear it apart and write a spec, and and ask me questions. Hour or two later, came back and it's like, I got one question. Uh, which 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 ad toolkit do you want, and do we need the in-app purchase for removing ads? I'm like, we're gonna do this free, no ads. I tracked down the original author. I got his blessing to release it, and over the course of 2 days, it churned out with like 3 or 4 very minor prompts from me, a faithful clone of the game, including the weird views and like the leaderboards and the whole thing, with one exception. The tiles had these sort of bump outs for the like triple word and double letter scores. It wasn't a square tile, it was a square tile with a curved thing at the top. I spent 6.5 hours with Codex trying to get those rounded corners right. It basically one-shotted a full Android to iOS reverse engineering and implementation port that was accepted on the iOS App Store on the first go, but it couldn't get the rounded corners right. And so the things that are easy and the things that are hard and the things that are impossible, totally different than they were before. I wouldn't have literally reverse engineered an APK back to source, pulled out all of the assets, and built a faithful clone for another platform in a day and a half.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what a great summary. Just to maybe capture the most important things you said there. So junior engineers are safe.
I mean, it's new work, but it's work. Yeah.
That's great. And I think especially for people in mid-career, like you said, it's very important to tinker as much as they can, learn as much as they can, and then very important, tinker with your most challenging idea, not the simplest one.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about these tools is that they empower indie devs and small teams in a way that I don't think they empower large orgs.
Right.
So if you've got a large org that is historically, you've got the 1 PM who is handing out chunks of implementation to a room full of 30 devs who are really just were being used as robots. They're not going to get the kinds of multiplicative effects that one person or a team of 5 is going to get, who can use these tools to multiply their taste and judgment and their capabilities. I hope we're going to be entering a new golden age of software where everybody gets the software that they actually want and that they need, and it is no longer, you can only have that one mass market version of this product.
Right. Super customized. Well, I think that's a wonderful closing thought. I do have a little tradition, and then I have a little surprise for you as well.
Okay.
So let's circle back around here and see where we ended up. Oh, we got seems like I should have run this on headless. Okay, so I guess we'll let this cook and then blend it in back in later.
Yeah.
But I have a couple of rounds of kind of rapid fire questions that I want to ask you before we wrap up.
Let's see how I do.
All right, let's do that. If somebody were to start an open source today, what would be your recommendation to them?
Just build stuff. Build the things that you want. Build, have opinions and taste.
That's the most important thing to then do.
I think so.
Great answer. What's the next kind of human trait that you think that you'd give AI, or that you think AI will acquire?
I feel like they already act enough like people that I don't know that there are more traits that they're going to adopt from people. I feel like kind of we're there. There's some capability, but
it seems like you're tapping a lot into that human intent you see in the models.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing an agent has maybe done to you unsupervised?
Okay. So all right. So is it okay if this might take a second?
Yeah.
So I had this problem a few months ago where Claude was deleting tests. First, it deleted a single line of test from a test file. Then I caught it having deleted a whole test file. And then I stopped it after it started to run rm-rf *** test star. And that was the point where I opened up 5 parallel Claude windows and explained, here is this behavior you've been engaging in over the course of a number of sessions. Why are you doing it? And I copied and pasted the exact same text to all 5. One of them was way off in left field with a weird answer that made no sense to me. The other 4 converged. They said, look, Jesse, you've got a line in your Claude.md that says all tests are my responsibility. You've got another line in your Claude.md that says even a single test failure is project failure. And I think I got freaked out. And look, if there are no tests, they can't fail.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did manage to fix it with one more line in my Claude.md. It was, the only thing worse than a failing test is a reduction in test coverage. And so it wasn't, you must never delete tests. It wasn't, tests are uneditable. It wasn't, you need to be careful. It was taking the exact rationalization that the agent had and giving it the anchoring and framing to understand that the behavior was wrong. And since then, it's never been a problem.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, very last question. What is one sentence that you think every CEO should hear, or everybody, maybe every CEO that thinks about adopting open source software should hear about open source?
I feel like I don't meet a lot of CEOs that don't believe in open source anymore. Open source doesn't cost anything in dollars to adopt. It is generally better engineered than proprietary products. It gives you the flexibility to evolve them, but also things have gotten real weird because it is now possible to adopt and maintain open source at a cost basis that is dramatically lower than it ever was before, because you no longer need to be thinking hard about maintenance in nearly the same way, because it turns out that you've got a bunch of engineers that are quite good at this.
So yeah, hopefully we'll see the world running on open source soon.
Yeah.
Beautiful way to round it up. Jesse, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
For coming on the pod. I have a little gift for you that I think, given your previous career as a keyboard manufacturer, this is a special gift to you from us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Lovely. Please, if you can pack it out, I would love to see your feedback on it. If you got it on the bottom, I think you got to open up a couple slips.
Yeah.
See what you say. I'm very curious to hear your feedback. We've been designing this and cooking on this for a little while.
Sure. This is similar to the one that they had done with Figma?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know which one that is, but...
Yeah. Catch fast, fix faster. I love the angling on that. That's very clever.
Yeah, it's a little review keyboard.
Yeah. How do you folks have the knob wired up?
Oh, it's the idea is we're not completely done with the perfect scripting yet, but the idea is to set up your code review to be more spicy or less assertive or more assertive.
Yeah. So one of the things that we had played with but never shipped was a standalone knob, and one of the ideas that we'd had for the knob was undo redo.
Ah, very interesting.
So,
Well, this could be up to you, whatever you want it to be, but
I feel like if that's the intent of the keyboard, you want explicitly accept and reject buttons.
That's exact right.
Yeah. Cute. Thank you so much for this.
Of course.
Lovely.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our podcast. So everyone who's been listening to this, go check out Superpowers. I think you have every reason now to go for it. Build something ambitious. And hopefully you tune into the next one. So see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.